look at the cycling world. And a bicycle can take you on a journey. Sometimes it can even be a journey to a new life. Margaret Gallagher sat in on a class at Cycleback. This is a very special training program that uses bike repair to help repair lives. And she's here to tell us more about it this morning.
Hello.
How does Cycleback work?
Well, it is an 8-week bike mechanic course that's geared towards people who face some pretty serious challenges and are now getting their lives back on track. Lanny Johnson is the coordinator for the program, and I met up with her at the Mighty Riders Bike Shop where the training is held.
They may come out of homelessness, addiction, mental health, or maybe they've just been out of work for a while. They've had to do a transition from a different trade.
Lanny works through different agencies and shelters throughout the city to help men and women know about this free training program, which has been running for about 2 years now, Rick.
How did it get started?
Well, it all began with a man named Robert McDougall who works at the Lookout Emergency Aid Society.
He was working with a lot of people at the Yukon shelter just as they're transitioning onto the job. And it's tough. It's tough when you don't have a trade, and especially when you're making a lot of life changes. So Robert ended up saying, let's get some of these guys trained in a skill that they can use and something that's vibrant in Vancouver.
So Robert partnered up with Ed Luciano, who owns Mighty Riders, and they started this comprehensive program, which they basically ran off the side of their desks, or in Ed's case, his workbench.
Why did Ed want to get involved?
Well, he knew a couple of people in the Lookout, and he'd also always been community-minded, something that he says is pretty innate to most people in the bike world.
Having worked in this business now since 1987 and meeting the various operators and various head mechanics, most of them have something of a heart. And I think the reason we get into this is because we actually do want to help, but our way of helping is through tinkering. But I think the core of it is, yes, everybody that comes in the door, we want to help them.
So Ed says this program provides a more formal way to really help folks in a meaningful way, though it's not without its challenges, Rick.
How so?
Well, as you might imagine, there are a lot of factors to consider.
In dealing with the various personalities and the various addictions and the various individual situations, you see so many different ways of being there. Getting them the support they need to continue to have the strength and the focus. On the other side of it is getting the other retailers and the other operators on board with becoming social workers and to help retrain and to help, strengthen the will of these students to continue, at least, if not being bike mechanics, just to get to the next step of what they were doing.
But they're not really social workers, so how does Cycleback address those challenges?
Well, Lanny says it's really about community partnerships on many different levels.
We do whatever we can to keep them in contact with the instructor, with myself, with Ed here at Mighty Riders. Just that way they have mentors in figuring out the bike community and in who's hiring. We work really closely with our community bikes in the pedal depot in helping connect people to keep growing in their skills. No matter what, just keep volunteering, keep training. We also will work with them on if there's housing issues, if they need more support around addictions or mental health, really being supportive of that. So sometimes we've had students that have needed to take a break. And you know what? No problem. We'll get you in on the next class.
So Lanny and Ed both pointed out that the cycle world is a pretty open environment, Rick. And if you're passionate about bikes, which the people who do this program are, chances are you're going to be welcomed regardless of where you're coming from, which isn't necessarily the case in every industry. Also, biking in and of itself can be healing and empowering, which is key for many of the students.
How's that work?
Well, I sat in on a bit of yesterday's session, which was the first day of class, and we were surrounded by tools and bikes, and the instructor, Andy Hunter, had the 6 students and me totally engaged as we went through the details about international measurement systems and possibilities of rebuilding bikes. And during the break, I caught up with a student named John, and he told me that biking helped him on his journey to wellness at a recovery center.
I would take the lessons I'd learned in the day and all the things I'd learned about myself and about my addiction and about all kinds of very deep things. And I would literally get on my bike and I'd ride into Richmond or ride around the Diamond Downlands or into Stanley Park. Everything I'd learned became sort of somehow physical part of me.
Cycling was freeing, but also grounding, and it also helped him to get around and connect with his support systems. Now, John's passionate about cycling as he makes this fresh start, and it's a gift that he wants to give back by introducing the joys of biking to other people who might find themselves in a tough situation, and this fits perfectly with his plans.
What about the success rate? What kind of success has this program enjoyed?
Well, Lanny tells me that they've completed 15 sessions with 3 to 6 students, and some have gone on to work in bike shops, including at the Mountain Equipment Co-op and at Mighty Riders. And even if students don't immediately or ever work in a bike store, learning those skills and graduating is part of a longer and still fulfilling journey. And now, Rick, the program is branching out to help itself and other people. Funding's always an issue with the nonprofit, so Cycleback is trying to become more self-sufficient by starting a social enterprise. You can buy a bike built by the students through our community bikes in the pedal depot, and you get a great bike with a story behind it, with the proceeds going to support Cycleback, which is about helping people to help themselves and others. Here's John.
It's about empowering people. Fundamentally, that's what bikes do. They empower people to move through their world, to empower them physically and mentally and emotionally and all those things. And they are, at the basic level, they're an affordable thing. I mean, all throughout the entire globe, it's something people can do. And this program fits into that because what it's doing is empowering us to empower other people.
So if you want to help out, Cycleback is also looking for donations of bikes for students to rebuild. They're looking at holding workshops for the public to generate revenue, and I'll post the info at cbc.ca/early edition.
Interesting. Thanks, Margaret.
Thanks, Rick.
Margaret Gallagher, who joins us every week at this time for High Velocity. And if you've got a cycling story or a cycling anecdote to share with Margaret, you can do so. Email us at earlyed@cbc.ca. 2.5 minutes now before 8 o'clock, and Cecilia is back with some news headlines.
Well, details of a new RCMP policing contract for BC will finally be released later today. But the CBC's learned it will continue with the 90-10 split in shared provincial-federal funding, except Ottawa will now pick up a little more of the cost of the special integrated unit.